Hello, everybody. Beau Billington back with Finding the Next Gear. Super pumped. I got Matt Tate here, CEO of Decimal. Matt, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Bo. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, what's exciting about this is, it seems like you've been in business, better part of 4 or 5 years. And I actually remember getting a call from you like 4 years ago when you were starting the business. Fast forward to today, it looks like you've got like 80 employees. So you've been on this trajectory of growth, which is like, it's insane.
Well, it certainly has felt that way. And my wife would tell you she's watched all of it. But it's been fun. You're right. We launched about 4.5 years ago, and I think we lucked into a really good problem and a really great team to solve it. And with that, we've grown in 4.5 years to, I think, 82 employees today, 650 clients, and we've made 2 acquisitions, and they won't be our last one. So it's been a really fun space for us to be in. I mean, we do boring things. We do accounting and bookkeeping and tax for people, but I think we figured out a way to do it really well.
Yeah, no, it seems like that. And so how does somebody go from like economics background, law school into account software and SaaS? Like how does one make the leap? I mean, have you always been kind of accounting minded, or has it been more around solving problems, operations, process, procedure?
Oh no, I mean, it's a winding path, but you do not go to law school if you know how to count. So I joke that I'm a recovering attorney running an accounting company, but for me, there is some continuity of the process. I practiced law for a few years, but then ultimately, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to run businesses and kind of be in that space. I grew up around a couple of really amazing entrepreneurs. And both of them, my dad and my grandfather, convinced me to go to law school because they thought it'd save me a hell of a lot of money on legal fees. I don't know if that's right, but I now know I'm a terrible client. But I prefer being a client to having them. So after I left law, I got into the tech startup world. I'm in Indianapolis, and it's not San Francisco, but we do have a pretty robust tech scene here. And that allowed me to just start getting into building businesses. And in doing that, Decimal is my third company. And I have always had a problem with what I call the accounting operations side of things, whether it was hiring somebody in-house or trying to hire the best accounting firms to do the work. Quite frankly, they all sucked. And like any good entrepreneur, I decided I see a problem, found an amazing business partner and co-founder, and we decided to see if we could solve the problem. And that's where we got into it. We do have some really amazing accountants that work for us, and some really amazing bookkeepers, but we run it kind of like a tech company, which has also been a really good thing culturally for us, particularly having a business that started right before the pandemic, carried through the pandemic, and now after the pandemic, being remote only. A lot of the things that we learned in kind of the great cultures of tech, applying that to accounting has been really, really an awesome thing for us.
It's super interesting as well about, taking kind of an old school discipline and profession like accounting and then making it more new school with kind of the tech focus, remote only, scrum meetings, I would imagine, as part of kind of the fabric of what you guys do. But let's rewind a little bit. And by the way, it's an accomplishment making it through COVID. I feel like if companies can make it through COVID, it's all but go in the hills from there. But so co-founder, so you jumped out of corporate America. You'd always been kind of tinkering with businesses. It's your third company. I mean, did you guys bootstrap this thing? Is there like a software backend that had to be developed? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you kind of came up with the idea, how that crystallized, and then how you operationalized it and got it off the ground.
So Jacob Cloran's my co-founder, and he and I have been working together. This is our second company where we've worked together. And I hired him as an intern after he spent a semester at IU and dropped out of college. And so he keeps me young. In fact, he's working for a month in Europe. I have kids, so I get to work all my summer in Indianapolis. But he and I really looked at it. And what we did was we love competing against accountants. And you kind of hit on it, new school, old school. We built Decimal from day one to scale. We bootstrapped it. We actually launched inside of a mid-sized accounting firm and bought it from them a couple of months after we started. We saw the opportunity. They didn't want it. We bought it. It ended up being a really, really good thing for us. But we look at scalability as a 3-step process for us. in our space. Step one is technology at the low end, is get technology, whether that is automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, get that to do as much work as possible. And then we have a team of outsourced, we have people in 5 countries, 26 states today. But you want to outsource as much work from a cost perspective there as you can. And then you layer US staff for final quality check, quality assurance, and client relationships, because you want to also give a truly amazing experience to people. But you want your team to be able to spend their time doing that rather than doing the work. And you can't do both at a price point that works. And so you have to figure out where you want to give and take. And we wanted to give to the client experience and take the work and give it to lower price points. And then you're constantly looking at each level and saying, hey, how much more can tech take from our outsource team? How much more of our outsource team can they take from the US team? And you're trying to constantly push that down and build to scale from day one, which is not something that most service businesses, law, accounting, like two sides of the same coin. They don't build with scale in mind. They just grow and then hope they figure out scale as it comes. Does that make sense?
Makes 100% sense. And I like kind of how you have that blended rate with the different, team, right? The distributed workforce. We've got US resources. I would imagine folks in the Philippines, Eastern Europe, et cetera. As part of that kind of middle layer that's doing a lot of the back end work. And I totally agree about the built for scale. What I found, and I've actually struggled with this myself. I've got a professional services org. It's so hard to get yourself out of the business, right? I find myself
100%.
Continually where I'm so concerned with like quality control, but yet other people can do that. And so that to me has been tough. And to your point, a lot of companies aren't built like that. They just kind of grow organically and they figure it out as they go, versus kind of building this engine and then kind of looking for the clients and continuing to kind of build out kind of an infrastructure that is ready for growth. So that's super interesting. And so 650 clients, right? So like how does one get 650 clients? I mean, is it sales? Is it founder-led sales? Like, talk to me a little bit about kind of the growth strategy, because that's a staggering number, particularly when you think about 4.5 years in.
Well, I think building, it's not just operationally building for scale, but it's also building the entire company for scale. I mean, one of the things we lucked into is we have 2 co-founders that do not have accounting backgrounds, which means from day one, neither one of us was doing work on clients. Now, we were doing some of the tech enablement stuff, some of the infrastructure, some of the process work, but we weren't doing accounting. From a sales perspective, every business goes through a couple of evolutionary phases. And you have, number one is the startup phase. How do you get to what you would call like product or service market fit? And then I like to call it the messy middle of, you have a bunch of, and you and I talked about this earlier, like you have a bunch of founders or entrepreneurs who started a business and then they realize, oh shit, I have a real company. I have to like build a business here, and that's process and that's people and, all the fun stuff that comes with owning a company. And then you get to scale and it's just adding more there. So for us, we built every phase of the business with those stages in mind. So the first stage is founder-led sales. I did the first couple of million in sales, started adding SDRs. It's something that I've done. This is my 3rd company. Like, I understand what that takes. But then you start to phase yourself out and you hire other people to do it. I still love hopping on sales calls every once in a while. I was a baseball guy growing up. And when you'd get into a slump in baseball, my dad would always say, lay down a bunt. Same thing in basketball, like shoot a layup, hit a free throw, like just do something easy. For me, when I get into a rut as a CEO or whatever else I'm doing, I'll just hop on a sales calls with one of the team. That gets me out of it. It just gives me my momentum. For other people, it could be hopping in and doing some accounting work or something I can't physically. They don't even give me access to my own QuickBooks. But that's how we built everything to scale. And now we have an amazing team. And with 80 people, I mean, we have people managing people. We've got people managing managers. We've got directors. Like, we have a lot of really good team members in place. And then the other part of that is, as quickly as possible, if you're building to scale, you as a CEO and as a founding team have to start hiring people that are better than you at certain things. And for those of us, particularly, I'm an 80s kid. Ego and being able to admit you're wrong and vulnerability and all that type of fun stuff was not a part of my childhood. But as a CEO, I have to be. I have to go find people that are really better than me at doing things. And we hired a COO, Michael, who's amazing. He's been the CEO of multiple companies. I interviewed him and he goes, look, the last thing I want is to be the CEO ever again. But I'm a really good process person. And I'm like, hey, that sounds great. But rather than me looking at kind of my thoughts on what that could be or kind of my vulnerabilities related to that, I said, hey, this looks like a great opportunity. Let's bring him in. He runs the business. He's much better at process than I am. We did end up getting investment. So we are venture backed. We've got an amazing partner in Arthur Ventures. We raised about $12 million a couple of years ago. Part of that's the roll-up strategy. So we've, out of the 650, about 400 of those we've brought in organically through sales. The other we've acquired. We live in a really good industry. There are 50,000 accounting firms out there. Not all of them love what they're doing. And we look at it as a team first approach. If we can find awesome people that want to join our mission to become really big in this space, great. We'd love to bring them on. So that's kind of how we've looked at it.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. And, what I really appreciate is kind of like your superpower was the fact that you're not an accountant, right? And I feel like I kind of brought that to my industry where like, I'm not from executive search. I didn't know anything about fractional space. And so it can also be your greatest strength, but also your greatest weakness at the same time.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
But it's been good for me personally because I feel I've had a nuanced way of looking at an industry that's very old school and that's prime for disruption, similar to yours. Additionally, too, what was really interesting about the different phases you set out is that a lot of business owners like don't realize that they're out of their depth or that it's okay,
Right.
like outgrow people, right? And so it sounds like you're kind of layering on, a little bit more professional folks as you continue your growth curve, which is super interesting. And I think that's another hard thing as well through like entrepreneurship and apply to the entrepreneurs, like knowing when you're out of your depth, knowing when you need support, asking for support, but then also like knowing your gaps. And, when we talked kind of before I hit record, that was one of my biggest issues, through the entrepreneurial journey rather, was, realizing that I'm not a process guy either. And that I need people to process because I'm just not inherently good at it. Right. A couple of questions to follow up for that and really interesting on kind of the acquisition and strategy, but let's talk a little bit about like product market fit.
Yeah.
You guys kind of like started an accounting services company within an accounting firm. How did you know that there was a need? Was it a hypothesis, assumption?
No, I mean, there is a discovery process that you kind of go through, and product market fit is never like very rarely 1 out of 10 million hit product market fit in their first shot.
Right.
So you're always making multiple shots and you're getting closer and closer to bullseye. And then as a business owner, you have to also look and say that bullseye is going to move. And I have to be constantly reevaluating. Like we live in a world that's moving much, much faster than it was even 10 years ago. And that means that what fits, you have to find. So for us, there were a couple of things that we really noticed in the market. Number one, I love being in an industry where you have to do this as business. I mean, I joke that you get this, running a company, the worst 3 things are HR, IT, and accounting. No business owner enjoys any of those. When you have to focus on it, you don't feel like you're moving forward. You feel like you're moving backwards because you're not doing anything that's helping the business grow. And so that's what we liked about this. And then we looked at kind of how it was being done. And 90% of this market is locked into one of 2 places. It's locked into, do I hire somebody or do I hire an accounting firm to do it? Having hired multiple people to do this at multiple companies, I know that hiring in this space sucks. You can't pay people what they want to get paid. They're not doing jobs. There's a lot of leveling to what happens. People want to be doing higher level work like FP&A looking forward, and you need them to pay the bills or you need them to do the bookkeeping, which means they're unhappy. And they're unhappy with what you're paying them. You're unhappy with what you're paying them. And so there's just this mismatch that occurs. On the accounting firm side, they are literally built to do anything other than this. Every person in an accounting firm or that wants to be a partner or principal in an accounting firm views this work as beneath them. They want to be doing tax work, advisory work, audit work. So they don't care about this stuff. But as a business owner, I have to do it. I literally have to do that. And so even in an accounting firm where over half of this work resides right now, you also have the mismatch of price and cost. It costs more for them to do this than you're willing to pay. And so you're all of a sudden doing this loss leader. And as a business owner, you know that anytime you have a loss leader, you're not focusing good people or good effort on it. And yet I have to do that. And I really can't screw up paying my bills, getting paid, and tracking it all. So there are all of these mismatches that are happening. And then from a people side, I don't know of a single accounting firm in the country with more than a couple of partners that any one of them started in bookkeeping, which means that the people that are doing the bookkeeping don't feel valued. They don't feel like they have a chance to grow. They don't feel like they have a chance at ownership. And so we said, forget that. Let's create a business. Let's give ownership to a team. Let's empower people. Let's give them flexibility. Let's break them out of this old school world and give them a fun, cool place to work that's built on shared work, that's built on, all of the principles that we built in other companies. Let's bring it here and create a culture that really focuses on client services. The other thing that we see, and you probably see this all the time, service industries, legal, accounting, marketing, as service industries scale, client services degrade because you just simply cannot do it at scale. So we thought this is an area because it's monthly, it's manual, it's repetitive work, and we think we can scale it. And we think we can scale a great client experience. Mm-hmm. And so we spent a lot of time really doing that. And we've had two kind of guiding principles throughout that have allowed us to do it in scaling. Number one is we'll be the most responsive team you'll ever deal with. Because you and I have both had lawyers or accountants where you're like, dude, where are you on this project? I'm like, oh, sorry, I didn't update you 3 weeks ago. You're like, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
And so being responsive is that. Yeah. We're going to make mistakes. We deal with millions of transactions a week. The greatest restaurant in the world puts out a bad dish. How you respond to that and being responsive, developing good relationships grants you grace along the way in a long-term relationship. Great. The other thing is business owners, we focus on this and we focus on our business every single day. Companies deserve a partner that does the same. No accounting firm in the world can do this every day for all of their clients. They just simply can't scale that. We do. And so those are things that give us competitive edges. And it's like you said, these are old school industries, and I love competing against old school. So,
yeah, it's super interesting, man. I like kind of the the responsiveness as well as accountability, and those are kind of part of our ethos as well. And I'm the same.
That's awesome.
I'm super responsive, and it goes a long way. And if we screw up, I own it. I will make a phone call, and I feel like you don't get that a lot of the time. And I really appreciate how you guys kind of niched down and found what maybe other accounting firms would deem kind of below them, a loss leader, or more tactical work where they want to just simply focus on the strategic. In that vein, I mean, do you guys partner? Like, do you leverage accounting firms as like a channel partner where you kind of take a lot of that work off their plate?
Yeah, that's the other thing that we really have done differently is from day one, we decided to create a really cool partner ecosystem and community. And it's not just with accounting firms. We partner with some really, really great ones because we also have like competitive tax work or CFO work. So we partner with a lot of fractional CFOs. We partner with a lot of tech companies, with accounting firms. We want it to be a source for every client where if you have a business need, let us know and we'll have a trusted partner that we can help you find. And in that too is, like you said, we really niche down to bookkeeping, operational work like bill pay and invoicing and tax, and really low level tax. Like for most businesses that are of a certain size, tax is just an operational extension. When you grow beyond that like 10 million mark, all of a sudden tax becomes a strategic thing where business owners would kind of look, how do I pay less in taxes? How do I maximize my value? Like all of those things. That's where we start to refer work out to some of these bigger accounting firms that really value the partnership. And so being in the ecosystem, what I found is that most accountants are really horrible referral sources. And so being different has also differentiated us in the partnership network and ecosystem.
It's funny. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs and small companies don't think about a channel play. And so that's really interesting that you have. And I agree. We've got a pretty robust partner ecosystem ourselves. And I'm very proactive with referrals, and it generally does come back. Does it always? No. But it back, and it's a good way to kind of stay top of mind with customers, clients, but also like feel good about the work you do, which is great.
Right.
So shifting gears a little bit here, we'll get you out of here in a few minutes, Matt. Really appreciate your time. But it sounds like you guys obviously found success quickly. 650, customers, $12 million in funding. That is crazy in 4.5 years. So the question to you is, was there ever a time, or has there been a time where you felt like hanging it up? Right? It sounds like it's all roses and puppy dogs, but
Oh God, no.
yeah, thanks, man. They don't go. I'm 7 years in.
So I'll change that question a little bit. Hanging it up, no. We've really loved this space. We've really felt confident that we were going to get there. And look, I've had one business that did really well. I've had one business that totally failed. The whole time we kind of knew that Decimal was going to get through, even in the hard times. But it doesn't mean we didn't have some hard times where, I mean, you get it at the very beginning. Sometimes you're lending a little extra money to the business, or you don't take a paycheck this month, or you're like, oh crap, we just lost more clients, or look, I've hired 82 people, but I have 82 people working for me. I've hired more than 82 people. So not everybody works out. I've hired executives that didn't work out. Like there are things that just get you as a business owner and you're like, God, this sucks. Yeah. What I've found too is you run through phases of burnout. And my co-founder and my COO and I, we talk about it a lot with our team. I was even talking to one of our accounting managers today. She's taking next week off. And I misinterpreted what she said. And I thought she was off now and slacking me. And I'm like, if you're off today and you're slacking me, we have a big problem. So really recognizing burnout and taking the time to detox, to take time off, shut off devices, be there with my kids, my family. Part of that's on a daily basis, but part of that's also like, hey, quarterly, I take like a week off because you get it. Like I'm not in a 40-hour a week job. No. I'm not even close to that. Like I do have good balance, but I'm also thinking about this shit as I go to bed, when I wake up, on Sundays, when I'm mowing the lawn. Like I need time to just not work. And so that type of thing, I think really gets into your head and finding the right balance. I mean, I talk and I advise CEOs too. It's something I do as a hobby. And one of the things I tell fast growth CEOs is I think that there are 3 pillars of success that you can really, really have. Number one is you have to focus on your mental and physical health, whatever that means for you. For me, that means staying healthy, working out, meditating, stuff like that. Number 2 is finding a peer group, a group of people doing similar things to you where you can talk and listen and you feel safe doing it. Number 3 is finding a paid coach, somebody that you actually pay to help you be better. Mentorship is awesome. But when you start really growing, you need somebody that you're paying to show up. And I found that all 3 of those things are a really good recipe for continuing success.
It's funny, the detox component is really interesting to me, and I completely relate on that front. And it's important, and I feel like it's almost more important when things aren't going well, right?
Oh, 100%.
That bad month, like even though you feel guilty for taking time off, it's when I step away from the business and I come back refreshed with ideas, ready to go. And that's something I didn't allow myself in the earlier stages of growing my company, which was a mistake. Also too, in regards to the detox component, I agree. We think about 24/7, and the difference between entrepreneurship and like corporate America is that I can't phone it in at 70% for a month if I'm having a hard time at home. Yeah. Or just in general, right? I've got to be, working at 80, 90% at all times, and it doesn't go away. It's Sundays at a soccer game. I'm thinking about work, which really sucks, but it's part of the grind. And then the tribe piece took me about 3-4 years before I found a tribe. And literally this week, I've got 2 coaching calls where I'm talking to guys and gals about potentially coaching me, paid for service to help.
Oh, nice.
I think that's critical.
Big time.
We'll get you out of here. So what do you think the number one trait is for entrepreneurs that actually find success versus those that don't?
Oh, that's a good question. I really do 2. Like there's a tie for me. One is curiosity. You have to be curious. You have to be willing to adapt and change. And curiosity lets you be wrong too, which is really important. I screw up all the time. Yeah. And the second is resilience. You have to be able to get back up. You will get knocked down. You will get pushed onto the ground. You have to be able to continue to get up. And if you can combine, I think, those 2 traits, I think you have a good chance at being successful really in anything you do.
I agree. Curiosity is not one that I've heard, but resilience, perseverance is kind of the recurring theme during that question. And I totally agree. So if you go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice before starting Decimal, what would that be?
Be yourself. I think it's taken me a long time to be okay being myself and being just authentic. And as soon as I got to that point in life, things just got better and easier. And I think so much of youth is A, figuring out who that is, and B, trying to be someone that other people think you should be. And so I would just say, be myself.
I totally agree. That's some sage advice I got from one boss that basically told me is before I jumped out of corporate America, but the quicker you can be yourself, the happier you'll be in all aspects of your life. And I agree. And as an entrepreneur, I'm 7 years in my journey, but it took me, I'd say about 5 to 5.5 before I really put myself, my authentic self out there in conversation and email, but then also podcasts and posting.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, I'm with you, man. It's not. And look, that we grow up and we change. And so you have to be willing to give yourself space to do that too.
Yeah, agreed. Well, Matt, hey man, really appreciate you taking the time. Super insightful, awesome journey. I really like how you kind of deconstructed like how a company can be built for scale and how that's how you approached your business. It sounds like you guys are just a rocket ship primed for some great things, man. So really appreciate you coming on sincerely. How can people learn more about Decimal, but also you as well as your podcast? And we'll be sure to add a link to this podcast.
No, yeah, dude, I really appreciate coming on. I love talking about this and it's been really fun having these conversations. If people just want to connect with me on LinkedIn, absolutely love to connect with people and just have good conversations. So decimal.com is our website if you're ever in need. But other than that, just connect on LinkedIn. And I just like having good conversations.
Cool,
kind of like this one.
Awesome. Hey, thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it.